Thank you to BQE, the makers of BQE Core, for their support of this episode. BQE Core is the software that makes it easy to manage your projects and people for maximum productivity and ultimate profitability. Learn more at bqe.com.
So, more of the similar saga of looking to no avail, although now we're looking more, and now that it's actually getting, realer and realer, and
Reeler and reeler, the realist.
And
we're looking for the realist.
Yeah, I can't come up with anything right now. My brain is so fried.
All those miles on the road, man.
We put so many miles on this poor vehicle in the past month that it's just like
I just watched this video on this because I picked up this old Toyota Tundra for pulling my trailer, and it has 320,000 miles on it, and it's great. I found this video on YouTube about the second million-mile Tundra. So there's been two of them. They're both the same year as mine, and it's like, oh yeah, mine could get there someday, I'm thinking. And then
you got those aspirations.
Not really. You get into the story of how they do that. These guys drive 9,000 miles a month.
Yeah, and you're like,
can you imagine your butt being in that seat for 9,000 miles times 12?
Yes. Well,
year after year.
Currently right now, yes.
All right. You're on trajectory.
Well, let's put it in perspective. Again, everybody's just like, I've heard this story, but
the story continues. Not over.
Yeah, I mean, bought a brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee 2021 the day before Thanksgiving. It had 14 miles on it, and I am about to hit 14,000 miles.
Wow,
on it,
dude. That's a year. Yeah.
In
6 months.
So constantly keep doing the agonizing math in my brain of like how quickly my warranty is going to go away.
Project manager, you could spreadsheet the hell out of this. Come on, I expect more.
No! I've already done the numbers of like if I continue to keep averaging what I'm averaging right now, then I will. But the good thing is that I was actually talking to somebody in the office, and they were just like, "Well, let's put it into perspective that you're doing all of these miles now. However, once you move, you're moving to a walkable community. You're going to be working from home, and if what you said is true, that your wife is going to be trying to get a teaching gig somewhere within that walkable community, we get to park it."
Yeah, right. So you're saying that balance will be achieved.
Balance will be achieved. I don't know when.
It'll be offset again by all those trips to the home improvement store, though. Just so you know.
Well,
twice a day, 3 times a day.
I'm not saying that it's something that I would be doing walking, but it is literally like 0.4 miles away from the areas that we're looking as the hardware store. So
I like it. That's one of the things on the list is how far is it to the hardware store, because you just know it's going to happen.
Oh yeah. To shout out to one of our friends and show listeners, Lee. I'm not going to use his last name just for protection's sake. Although we might be talking about him a couple of times.
I think we're gonna have to say who it is.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Lee Callisti. I'm just gonna put it out there. Lee, you didn't have to say it.
So yeah,
you can blame me.
There you go. Lee. He was the one who gave away your anonymity.
Yeah, it was me.
Oh, but he was saying that he, as a sole practitioner, he'll teach me the ways of working from home. And so I am totally looking. And here's the funny thing is I literally keep thinking is like, okay, yeah, I'm going to continue to keep working for the firm that I work for, but it is going to be very much a physical working, like being almost a sole practitioner, at least in body, not in mind, but in body, it will be a sole practitioner. And so some of the things that, we see a lot of our sole practitioner friends do to kind of like break up the day of like getting out and working in other places and things like that.
We must learn how to cope with ourselves. Yeah.
are everything that I had kind of like laid out to my wife is like, look, I understand that this is a hard ask for everybody to kind of like potentially put up with this, but I think one, it would be great for the family in its own right, because, you know, you can walk to shops, you can walk to libraries, you can walk to the water, you can walk wherever you want to walk. But it's just this hard push of me trying to like get something that is very selfish. It is so selfishly motivated right now that I'm like, I will go insane if I have to continue to keep being like in the house by myself.
Work with myself.
Yeah.
The echo chamber tightens.
Yes, I've been doing it for the last 2 years, and sure.
But now you're going back to the office, and you do drive a lot. And before that, you were traveling to the job site via lots of plane flights, and that might slow down.
Well, no, I mean, you know, I'll still be working on the same project, so I'll be flying out of the Detroit, you know, metro. And,
but you're out of sight, so you're out of their mind, so they'll call on you.
But I am out of sight and out of mind and all this other stuff. So, you know, I'm going to have to, like, one, keep reminding everybody that I still work there, and two,
I'm not dead yet.
Yes, exactly. So here we were this past weekend again, you know, fifth straight weekend in a row where we've driven back and forth from Maryland to Michigan, and, you know, my wife's still there, but we just did a couple of like tours where she was there in person and I was on FaceTime. And I swear she will learn one of these days, just like, it's a lot easier for me to see things in landscape rather than portrait mode.
It is a little weird, right? With FaceTime, because the orientation of the phone, like, and what it covers up on the screen and what amount of space there's all kinds of weird little UI things about that are just kind of, there's a learning curve to it for sure. Switching the cameras around.
She said yesterday she went and she toured the same houses that she, you know, actually toured again today, more because yesterday was sort of a rush.
I don't know, man. Sounds kind of desperate.
Well, today she went back to kind of like digest a little bit more. She wanted to look at, you know, the area, like, you know, one of them's a little bit closer to a main road. And so she was just wanted to feel comfortable that if the daughter's out walking the dog and all this other stuff, that it's going to be a safe environment and everything else, you know. And so all of these, you know, really.
That's good. Yeah. Take it all in.
So, you know, she kind of whirlwinded yesterday, and today she took it really slow, and her mom was there with her. And so, you know, she had my favorite mother-in-law, you know, with her, the only
out of
one,
all of them,
you know. Yeah. But anyway, so, and it was good. And so today, you know, we kind of had a little bit more time, and it's interesting because, again, this is, you know, now how we're working, you know, both how we, my wife and I, are looking for homes, but we, as in the broader architectural community, are now working this way. And it's interesting because the way that we're looking for a home is the way that people are looking for jobs now. And it was so interesting to just kind of like think about that as we're talking about it. It's just like, okay, if I'm walking around, say, a job site, and I'm virtually talking with somebody else, and I'm trying to convey some information to them, and I'm doing it, you know, video, it's, you know, portrait mode, landscape mode, wide angle, normal angle, or zoom in, you know, and those kind of things. And it was just like, you know, this is the way of, this is the new way.
Yeah.
You know,
I always think you can tell how somebody has only ever used a mobile device as their camera when they hand you their camera and you step back to take a photo of them for them. You know, you're doing a favor, right? You're at like me, you're at the bike park or something, and somebody wants their photo taken, and it's like, and I hold the phone in landscape, and they're like, no, vertical. Smack in my head. What? Yeah, because everything is now oriented for the vertical picture format. Because I need to post that, right? That's what it's for.
So it's funny is that you say that too, because I remember, and so you've been there, and so you know, as I explain this, you'll know kind of like the view and the setting and everything. So we went for a walk out at Great Falls Park in that's right on the Potomac River, and it's this big, massive falls and everything else. And so somebody very same thing. Somebody had asked me, "Oh, would you mind taking a picture?" Because I was carrying my camera, so they assumed that I was actually, capable of taking a picture. Yeah, and so they handed me my phone, and I turned it, and they're like, "Oh, no, can you hold it portrait?" I'm like, "But don't you want the view as well? I mean, you want you and the falls?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah." And you're just like, I mean, this is a massive view that you're asking me to get into a little portrait frame. Like, so I actually did one at portrait, and then I did one in landscape, and they looked at both of them and they're like, "Oh, thank you for suggesting that."
I'm going to give you a little lesson right now.
Yeah.
It's called context, and we want to see it.
Exactly. So the saga still continues. We're still viewing, offering, haven't offered in at least a week, so, but now we looked at a couple of homes today. We really like them. We really, feel comfortable with the area and everything that the community, again, it's all about kind of like this community and being able to see what everything else is offered. We feel really good about the two areas. And so we're going to make 2 more offers today and cross our fingers and see how it goes. One of them, we're advised to kind of lowball because they feel like it is $40 a square foot more than the comps in the area. And so
there's a lot of houses on the market that are like wishful thinking money, right? People are like, yeah, I'll take, if somebody wants to give me this much, I'll definitely sell it.
Exactly. And so we're thinking, okay, well, if somebody's willing to pay that money, then good on them. We aren't. We like the house. And so,
Yeah, and that is happening. I've been following some people on Twitter who are going through similar, house hunting and being outbid by $500K above asking in cash. Like, what? That's a thing? That's in San Francisco. Like, geez. That's insane. Insanity money. Who has insanity money? Not architects.
Good luck to them. Exactly. I was going to say, good luck on them because I ain't. But yeah, so that's
well, good luck. Break a leg. All the things. Do that.
Yeah.
Hope it works out for you.
The one fun thing is so we did this week. Not only did we look at homes this weekend, but we also drove basically 1,300 miles for just this one trip, which was us from DC to Detroit to Marquette, Michigan, which is where the University of Northern Michigan is, or Northern Michigan University. Always keep getting it backwards. Anyway.
It's okay. We'll hear about it.
Yeah.
Email Cormac.
Where my son is going to be a incoming freshman next year, or not next year, in the fall. And so we were like, looking at like the weather reports. I'm like, is it going to be cold there? What do we need to pack? All this other stuff. And I'm like reading something and it said the Marquette is just, it's like Marquette is just coming off of a record snowfall of 18 feet this season. I'm like, 18 feet. Like I actually put it, I was just like, that's 3 of my sons standing on top of each other. Yeah. But he doesn't. Well, here's the thing that just worries me about this little fool. Well, can't say little fool, 6'4" fool is that he hates wearing jackets.
Well,
it had 18 feet of snow.
He'll learn. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, just do me a favor and just don't be stupid. Like,
yeah.
Please just wear clothes. He's out there. It's 28 degrees and he's wearing a t-shirt. This past weekend he's just like, well, it's just not cold. I'm like,
very manly.
Stay out here for an hour and see if you feel any different.
Wait till the first time he calls you with a chill,
or wait till the nurse calls me. It's like, yeah, which funny enough, not funny enough. Sorry, that's the wrong way to phrase that one. But our realtor, who's been working with us, which has been just phenomenal, very patient with us. But she's just like, well, my boyfriend. My boyfriend went to Michigan Tech, which is even more north than Northern Michigan is, and she was just like, yeah, he was pretty much the same way. And, he lost portions of his fingers from frostbite. And I'm just like, you don't tell me that, because that is the story of my son. You're like, oh, it's not cold. Like, yes, it is.
No, I'm going to prove
yes,
it to you.
It is.
Oh, well,
But anyway,
he will learn. I wonder what the winter average low temperature is there. It's got to be in the many negatives.
well, they recorded like I think a -36 this past winter, and it's right on Lake Superior.
Yeah, right. So there's nothing stopping that wind.
Exactly, nothing. Like we were up there this weekend, and there was gale force wind warnings for Lake Superior. So there were 6 freighters like moored off of, in Lake Superior, right off of Marquette's docks, because they couldn't go any further without, potentially risking their own lives. So they were like, yeah, I don't think we'll do this. Probably a good idea. The only thing that really sucked is that apparently the Northern Lights have been really, really, active in Northern Michigan in the UP, and it was overcast. And so the 3 days we were there, I didn't get it. I didn't get the opportunity to see any of them. That is still a bucket list of mine, is to be able to see the Northern Lights.
Same here. Yeah. It's just, you don't find yourself up north during the winter. I mean, maybe you will now. You guys can go visit, but he's probably going to be the one who wants to come visit you, not the other way around, when it's actually that cold out.
I was going to say, he's probably going to want to come home just so that A, he can defrost, and B, we can stock him up on food, and C, he can do his laundry.
Right. Because, yeah, he'll only do it a couple times. Well, it doesn't sound like he wears much anyway, so you're okay.
It's true.
So speaking of Lee Callisti, he had a great comment on our previous episode about how to not be in an office. And he actually had several comments, but I'm just going to really focus on one, which is his first comment, which is, okay, how are people not commenting? And Lee did listen to the episode right as it came out, it looks like, but there has been silence since then. And I think I even talked about it during the episode, that I felt like this could potentially be, or that it would be, a potential tipping point for this kind of behavior, which is everywhere, not just by the 3 panelists on this live stream that SCI-Arc put out. And in what I mean by that is, like, there's lots of schools that act like this. There's lots of firms that act like this. There's lots of individuals who act like this. And so I would have thought that others would be sharing that. And maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, and maybe they're not listeners of this podcast. So that's totally also probably the case. But there's got to be somebody out there who cares about this besides Lee and us. And so I appreciate that he did that to kind of poke the fire a little bit. And at the same time, I kind of feel like people aren't going to take this opportunity. And what I mean by that is an opportunity for conversation about this. I don't mean as an opportunity to cancel as many people as possible. And like Lee said, he's not for canceling. I'm not for canceling either, but I am for conversation, absolutely, about this. And I feel like the silence is acceptance kind of a mantra is what it made me think of. And to me, that's really sad, because I feel like I said, this is an opportunity to have these conversations while it's fresh, and for the profession to start to deal with this. And because it needs to be dealt with, this honestly is not okay. And I do feel like maybe this is a generational thing. The people who have been through it doesn't think it's their problem anymore. Like, they've lived this and that was how it was for them, but it isn't like that anymore. But honestly, like, the younger generations, the emerging professionals, need the advocacy of the older generations. Number one, just to recognize that this actually is a problem, and it's not just looking through one particular lens of one particular age group or, place in life, station in life. I think that's a key important part that isn't being voiced. Not that I can see. So again, maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. I would love to know where people are looking at this or talking about this, if those exist. But if not, why not? Like, what is the bigger issue here? And if it really is just people unwilling to stand up for this, then I think that's pretty shameful of the profession.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, I'm not saying just commenting to, like, maybe our assessment, but just commenting in general. I mean, there should really be people who are, I mean, there is, and we've seen, because that, a lot of people who are up in arms about this, but, in general, you're absolutely right. I mean, this needs to be a hot topic that is talked about now and for quite a while down the road. We need to keep talking about it, keep it fresh in our mind. Everybody may want to sweep it under the rug and move on, but that's the damaging part of all of this, is sweeping it under the rug and moving on is not going to fix the problem. And if people don't think that this is a problem, that's an even bigger problem than just the comments that were made by just 3 people. I mean, this silence is just as bad as the non-silence from those 3.
I totally agree. And I one of the things that we tweeted about to just kind of get the message out a little bit more is, like, this is all about toxic work environments, predatory employment culture, and proliferation of the worst aspects of the architectural profession. I honestly feel that. And like, I think we gave a few disclaimers, like maybe these people, and to echo what Vitruvius Grind, the pseudonymous Twitter account, said in the write-up that they provided. And I think there was a lot of good points in there. Maybe they were just having a bad day, right? I think we can definitely allow that, but I also think that this stuff comes out, like they say, the jokes are rooted in truth, right? And not that this was a joke, but like, this is rooted in truth. This is rooted in observed behavior that we've all seen before. We've all probably experienced before on one level or another. And I think there's probably many groups within the profession who felt it way worse than other groups within the profession, right? So any non-white male group of the profession has probably felt it worse, even though all of the panelists were white, not white male, right? But there's definite, like, this is pervasive, and I would have to think that some people have felt this way worse than a lot of other people. And I'm not actually speaking for myself. I have not experienced this toxic culture. The firms that I grew up in did not do this to me, at least. And I think when there was any kind of weird or egregious behavior, it was called out within that office, and it was talked about. And I'm just kind of flummoxed that there's just a silence on this.
Yeah, I'll say that I did experience this in a couple of different places that I worked, but I personally was a little bit different because, coming into the profession after the military, it was a total don't take any shit kind of attitude on my part, where I'm like, okay, you can call me out and you can treat me like crap if I'm doing a bad job. If I was doing a horrible job, please call me out on it. Please tell me. Treat me as a professional, though. Don't treat me like a child, and don't, like, embarrass me in front of my coworkers, because then it just becomes this horribly toxic environment for me.
Let's take a quick break to share more about our sponsors. Systems and standard operating procedures. You already know that's how to build a profitable business and find the freedom you want. You need systems and procedures. But you struggle with choosing the systems you need most and how to implement those systems quickly so you can get back to doing what you love most. The Designing Your Business Masterclass series was created by an acclaimed architect and business consultant, Douglas Teager, FAIA, to help fellow architects and engineers run their firms more profitably while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Douglas grew from a solo practitioner to become managing partner of his 30-plus person firm, and then later sold his firm so he can do what he does today, helping architects be more successful at Tiger Consulting. On the third Wednesday of every month, Douglas dives deep into an essential topic that will strengthen the profitability of your firm and make it sustainable for growth in the years to come. Register now for the Designing Your Business Masterclass with Douglas Tiger at bqe.com/masterclass and start implementing powerful systems for the profitability you need and the freedom you want. Every live masterclass session includes AIA continuing education credit, and when you visit bqe.com/masterclass, you'll have access to the full library of past sessions on demand. The Designing Your Business Masterclass is free, and it's brought to you by our friends at BQE, the makers of BQE Core, the software that makes it easy to manage your projects and people for maximum productivity and ultimate profitability. Register now for the next Designing Your Business Masterclass at bqe.com/masterclass. That's bqe.com/masterclass. And now let's get back to our conversation.
I remember one time, because I was covering let's just say I was covering the office's ass for something that not only was I new to the firm, so I didn't know the backstory of it, but because the firm was being called out for some pretty interesting practices, shall we say, I was trying to do my best to be very professional and protect them without just admitting to the faults that the client and the contractor of this particular episode was. But I also wasn't going to lie and put myself in a compromising position, because then I'm compromising my morality, my professionalism for something that, one, because I was new to that firm, I had no idea what the backstory was again, and so I was very honest, but I was also very professional and tried to keep a good strong foot for our firm. However, when the client did reach out to the managing principal, he literally must have been standing there waiting for me to return to the office after this meeting, because he was standing in the middle of the office, and this is an office of 40 people, and basically just almost immediately once I walked in, started laying into me and embarrassing me in front of everybody. And so people were looking at me and with a horrified look. With an absolute horrified look, people were just looking at me, and they were just horrified. And so, and I'll say to my younger self's credit, I just looked at everybody. I smirked, gave him almost a Grinch style smile. And as he stormed off to his office, I stormed off right after him. And then it walked into his office, closed the door behind him, and I was just so let's have a conversation professionally. This is coming off of me trying to immerse myself into this project. So back to this obscene, I literally would get into the office at 6 a.m. and I would leave at midnight every single day for almost for the 14 months that I worked there. And because it was just, one, we were understaffed, we were overworked, we had a lot of work to do. I purposely threw a lot more on myself because I was new to the firm, and I was taking over project management duties for several different projects that were in either, all the way from concept design into CA. In all of these projects that I assumed from, a departing, PM, which I wonder why they departed, were in, different states of array, probably not necessarily because of the PM, but, because of the environment. And so, I purposely kind of immersed myself a little bit too much in trying to get myself wrapped around all of these things. But, did I need to work, those long hours? Probably not. Did it do damage to, not only my home life, but my own health? More my health than my home life, because thankfully I've got a decently strong home life. But I mean, there's only just so much that your wife can take because it was when we first moved to the DC area. My daughter was 6 months old. The boys were, younger. One was in kindergarten, one was in second grade. And so there was a lot that I was putting on her shoulders as well. And so, it was just I looked at it and I'm like, this kind of belief that this is what, he didn't tell you that you had to do these hours. it was an unwritten expectation that you would do these hours. That,
oh, that's a lot like school, right?
Who cares how long you have to work? I'm gracious enough to give you this job. You just do as long as you need to do. And so there would be times when he would call me up at like 11 o'clock at night on, the few days that, like the one day, Sunday, that I actually wasn't in the office. And he was just like, are you ready for the meeting tomorrow morning? Like, it's Sunday, dude. Sunday night, in fact. Move along.
So, yeah. Wow.
So, yeah. I mean, so I fell down a rabbit hole, so forgive me all. But, it was just like I've experienced, some pretty toxic environments that the mentality of these three at, SCI-Arc is very prevalent within our profession. And so back to like what Lee was saying is like, why aren't people, speaking up on this? Why aren't people like yelling out that this is bad? Because it still does happen. I mean, one hopes that 14 years later from, when I, first arrived in this area, because I mean, the firm that I had left and came to, well, other than the stint that I was working for myself, it was a small firm. It was a collective that was of like people who were like-minded and also like, really cared about the work that they were doing. And so if there was a little bit of extra hours, that they did do, they recouped that time. And so it wasn't like trying to like drive the nail into your coffin type place to work. Whereas, when I got here and everybody was demanding that you do as many hours as you possibly can, because that's, that's what we pay you for. But that is the mentality for a lot of the old guard, that for some reason they believe that is like, that's the duty. That is, it's not even, it's just like your responsibility as an architectural professional is to work that, 12 to 18 hours a day at this job. And in 8 hours, what's wrong with you?
Well, and I guess that's my biggest problem with this is that it's being ingrained in people during school, right? And
that's what made it worse. Yeah.
It's the formational time, and I get it. Like they're taking advantage of that formative time to get people into that mindset for the rest of their career.
How did that even remotely sound appealing to the students that were listening to this? That you're like, oh, well, that sounds shitty. Sign me up.
Well, and I think it was alluded to in one of the questions at the end by that international student who said that she had been tricked into it, right? She felt like she had been tricked into it. And I think this is the unspoken stuff that happens to you while you're in school. And most people don't say anything about it. They just go along with it because what are they going to do? Like, and you can see the toxic culture that did exist here was, well, it'll be used against you if you do.
I mean, people's scholarships were being threatened. People's, just like they're like, well, I mean, we could weed you out by, if you're not going to give that 110%, you don't necessarily have to be here, kind of like mentality. And it was just, I mean, why as professionals, as well as professors, are they continuing to perpetuate the problem in the, I mean, they're just, it's just like, well, this was how I was treated. So just be prepared that this is how you should be treated too. And you're just like, no. This is your opportunity. You literally have the pulpit to change that mentality and to improve that mentality.
This was a great point in the Vitruvius Grind post that we linked to. I guess we'll link to it in this one again, is that they stated that there aren't any new ideas coming from the faculty when in regards to how to practice architecture. There aren't any new ideas when it comes to the architectural education. No, it's just let's proliferate the way we've always done it.
Right. I mean, that old adage that every time you're out on the job site and you're hoping that the contractor is going to maybe do something the way that you drew it, and like, that's the way we've been doing it for 50 years. And they're literally doing the same thing. It's just like, this is the way that it's always been done. This is the way it will continue to be done, and you will like it. Or, even when the conversation was like, well, you don't really have to, you can have a SCI-Arc degree and not really work in architecture. They're saying, well, if you're not strong enough to be in architecture, then, take your degree and go bake cupcakes.
Is that what you're supposed to do?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that was not a specific suggestion, but I mean, it was like the attitude is like, if you can't hack it, if you can't hack this like boot camp mentality of the way that SCI-Arc and these associated firms with SCI-Arc treat you, well, then you are going to have a great, they're not saying leave the profession. They're like, still keep, paying us all of this money for us to have these, crazy high salaries. However, when you do leave and you can't hack it, do something else. But you'll have that SCI-Arc degree and it'll get you somewhere.
So if one school or one student body or some professors can't change this, I mean, to me, we have to put the magnifying glass on the National Architectural Accrediting Board, because they're the ones who are giving this school, bestowing upon them the ability to be a quote unquote accredited program, which then counts towards your degree, licensure, all these things. So NCARB is definitely a part of this as well. And how are they not evaluating this cultural aspect of the profession? As far as, I mean, they're also responsible for helping this way of doing things proliferate.
Right. Because every one of these, national organizations, NCARB, AIA, every one of them are talking about how can you improve the professional community? How can you improve the workplace? Yet, when you sit back and you listen to these comments of, this perpetuation of yesteryear, and not do or say anything about it, you're complicit. Complicit.
Yeah, I agree. And I haven't seen a thing from any one of those organizations. NAAB, AIA, NCARB. I haven't seen a thing from them.
There are schools like that will do things like that, because there will be but it's the prestige of the name of where you're at, and so you're like, well, I'm going to have a degree that's going to say SCI-Arc on it, and think about where that's going to get me. And I'm thinking to myself, and actually Lee brought up a great point. He's just like, thank goodness for my Kent State degree and the school that was there, and he even gave a good little shout out to Auburn. It's just like, I didn't have that experience. I actually had a pretty nurturing experience. And, then all of the other things that were available to me through my, university degree actually, in my opinion, gave me an even broader perspective on the profession and all of its associations to other professions, with this degree. And I loved my degree. I loved my experience at Auburn. Other than, their decision to go from Macs to PCs, I mean, I can't find any, fault.
Switching religions? What?
I mean, right? But well, I mean, other than that, it was just like, I loved I'm still in communication with all of my professors that are still with us. And, and it's just because the environment that they created was a mentoring type environment that really made me appreciate and love the profession. And so when you see things like, the bully pulpit of SCI-Arc and what they're, kind of like espousing, that you're just like, wow, just somebody needs to stop this.
Yeah. And I think like some of the structural issues that this leads to, because it's not to say any school is perfect. They're likely not. When you think about the state of an FAIA faculty member saying that the only way to have a career in architecture is to have several, I can't remember how many side hustles. You need at least 3, maybe 5 side hustles to make it as an architect. And I mean, teaching is one of those, right? I mean, she's doing that for sure. I mean, and that's the way a lot of these people actually survive, because the curriculum at the school. So again, back to NAAB, it's not teaching people how to run businesses. It's not teaching people how to have successful businesses. It's not even teaching business basics or fundamentals at all, and therefore perpetuating that part of the narrative as well. And we're all cool with that, right? Silence is acceptance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know what else to say about this. I just felt like there was a little bit more that we needed to get into there, because I am kind of shocked at the silence of it. And again, maybe that's just because this is a small echo chamber. I don't know. I would love to know what the listeners have heard, where the action is happening, if it's happening. Are you hearing your leaders talk about it? Are you hearing your supervisors talk about it? Are they guilty of it? Are they supporting it through silence? Like what, just, and again, not to cancel people, but and you don't even use names then, but just, we need to be having these conversations. This needs to be a dialogue. And I do feel like the younger generations are way more on top of that than the older ones, as far as having those online and having this network in the community of architecture that exists on Twitter and other places. The only action I've really seen on this is in the Entre Architect community. I know Jeff Eccles has been hosting a couple of Context and Clarity podcasts on this topic, not necessarily about what exactly happened, but the bigger reasons behind this behavior, just because that's what we can actually act upon. And again, not to cancel, but to evolve into a better practice.
And you said something that's pretty spot on, is the students today of today aren't really standing for it the way that we stood, sort of had to stand for it, because we didn't have the context of what it's like in other schools and stuff like that.
We didn't have a globally connected community. We didn't have live stream consciousness in digital form that was pervasive into every aspect of our lives at that time.
So Auburn students couldn't reach out to SCI-Arc students and, say, oh my gosh, I just saw what's going down at your school. I mean, hey, this is what's going on at our school. And, and having that dialogue between like all of these different, like student organizations, as well as just students themselves, are more educated and more informed about other realities within the profession and within, academic community, that I'm so glad for that, because it really, so like when I had the, kind of like, I just got out of the Army, so I had the Army take no shit kind of mentality. I mean, I'm glad that that's like the prevalent, thing right now. It's just don't sit by and like let it happen to you, like stand up and say something. But with that call of like the students standing up and saying something, they need to actually not just demand like their professors to like acknowledge this, but they need to like say, hey, professionals, is this really the shit that you're, wanting me to come into? Because
if so, no thanks. Right.
Exactly.
I totally agree with
I can go make more money doing this or that, but I did, I had a passion for architecture, but if this is what architecture is, no thanks.
Yeah, spoil the
I don't
passion.
want it.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge opportunity. I mean, maybe we can end on a good note here. I think this is a huge opportunity for the firms and the schools that do not operate like this to make a point about it and to get their information out there and to get all of the people who would put in a good word for them to activate that group to actually validate it, right? Because that's what, basically like Yelp reviews for architecture degrees. 5 stars, would recommend. It's like would go back again. I think there's a huge opportunity for those schools, because this is what every firm in the country is dealing with: attraction and retention of staff, right? Guess what? Schools compete for that too. That's what the programs have to do. They have to compete for people to go. Now, obviously, some don't have to compete for that because they have this stature that has been established based on some criteria, right? And I get it. There's lists of great schools out there, and there's probably the usual suspects in the top 5 every year, and that definitely gives some credibility. And there's also the work that comes out of those schools, and there's also kind of the mentality of those schools, and they have a reputation and this and that. But man, what a huge opportunity if there are schools who could benefit from showing that they are not putting up with that toxic behavior. They're not having this culture that we're talking about here, where it's predatory on people's livelihoods, on their mental health, all of those things. Wow. Like, that sounds really attractive all of a sudden in a world where we are now hyper aware of those things. Anyway, good talk.
Couldn't agree more.
Hey, everybody, just tell us what you think.
And tell the profession what you think, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell them, don't be silent. The toxic environment needs to go away. And if the old guard needs to be pushed out, push them.
Thank you to BQE, the makers of BQE Core, for their support of this podcast episode. Visit bqe.com/masterclass to register for the next Designing Your Business Masterclass. Thanks for listening. This show is part of the Gable Media Podcast Network. See all the shows at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what we're doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and don't forget to share it with your friends. We'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at archispeakpodcast.com, where you can find our entire catalog of shows. Talk to you soon.